Breaking news: there is a major storyline developing around the Cincinnati Bengals right now, and it is one that could have a significant impact on the future of the roster beyond the upcoming season. While much of the attention around the team has focused on preparing for what is shaping up to be an important year, another conversation is quietly gaining momentum behind the scenes. It involves contract extensions, roster decisions, possible trade discussions, and even some new information about the Bengals' upcoming preseason plans. And right in the middle of all of it stands one player whose name continues to generate more and more attention every time he steps onto the field: DJ Turner. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the channel and stay connected, because these are exactly the kinds of Bengals stories that can develop quickly. And when new information arrives, you want to be among the first fans to know what's happening. Now, let's get to what matters. As the Bengals continue their preparations for the future, one of the biggest questions surrounding the organization is how they plan to handle a growing list of players who could be looking for new contracts. The situation is becoming increasingly interesting because Cincinnati is not dealing with just one potential extension candidate. There are multiple names being discussed, and each one presents its own challenges and decisions. Among the names being mentioned are Myles Murphy, Dax Hill, Dalton Risner, Chase Brown, and DJ Turner. But even with several important players entering extension conversations, one name appears to be attracting more attention than any other. That player is DJ Turner. The reason is simple. Turner has steadily improved throughout his NFL career. Year after year, he has continued to develop, and the progression has become difficult to ignore. As a result, many Bengals fans have started viewing him as one of the organization's most important extension priorities moving forward. That became even more obvious when he arrived for off-season activities. Almost immediately, questions about a potential new contract followed him. Not because of any holdout situation, not because of any public dispute. Instead, it was because his performance has created a natural expectation that extension discussions would eventually become part of the conversation. And according to Turner himself, those discussions are happening. When asked about the status of contract talks, Turner kept his response professional and measured. He did not reveal details. He did not create headlines with bold statements. Instead, he explained that his agents are handling those discussions. However, he also confirmed something that Bengals fans had been eager to hear. Conversations between his representatives and the Bengals have taken place. That detail may seem small on the surface, but it is important. It means there is communication. It means the possibility of an extension is not simply speculation. It means both sides are at least discussing what the future could look like. And for Bengals fans hoping to see Turner remain in Cincinnati long-term, that is an encouraging development. Of course, discussion and agreement are two very different things. The real challenge begins when the conversation turns to numbers. What exactly would a DJ Turner extension look like? That question becomes complicated because the cornerback market continues to evolve. Every time another talented defensive back signs a new deal, the market changes. New contracts reset expectations. New contracts establish new benchmarks. New contracts influence future negotiations. That means the Bengals are operating in a landscape that is constantly moving. Recent deals around the league have helped establish new standards for cornerbacks. Some players signed years ago under different market conditions. Others have signed much more recently, benefiting from the latest increases in positional value. As a result, Turner and his representatives will naturally be looking at today's market rather than yesterday's market. And that creates an interesting debate. Can DJ Turner become one of the highest-paid cornerbacks in football? Can he break into the upper tier of contracts at the position? Can he position himself among the league's top earners if he continues his upward trajectory? Those questions do not have definitive answers yet, but they are becoming increasingly relevant. One projection mentioned in discussions surrounding Turner places his potential value at roughly 3 years and $42 million. Some view that figure as reasonable. Others believe it may actually be somewhat conservative, considering the direction of the market and the continued growth of his performance. Another comparison that has been brought up involves Jalen Watson's reported 3-year, $51 million deal with the Los Angeles Rams. If that number becomes part of the market conversation, then Turner could find himself seeking a figure much closer to that range. And that is where timing becomes critical. Every season a player waits before signing a contract creates both risk and opportunity. If Turner has another strong year, his value could rise significantly. If he continues improving, his negotiating position could become even stronger. And if that happens, the Bengals may find themselves paying considerably more than they would today. That reality creates pressure on both sides. The Bengals must decide whether they want to move sooner rather than later. Turner must determine whether waiting could produce an even larger payday. These are the kinds of situations that often define an off-season. The interesting part is that there seems to be widespread belief that Turner is eventually going to get paid somewhere. The bigger question is whether that payment comes from Cincinnati. That is the decision looming in the background. Because while the Bengals clearly value their roster, they also face difficult financial decisions. Every extension impacts future flexibility. Every contract affects future roster construction. Every commitment requires prioritization. And when multiple players are seeking new deals, organizations must decide who receives those resources first. That is why Turner has become such a fascinating storyline. He represents both a football decision and a financial decision. His development suggests he has earned serious consideration. The timing suggests the conversation cannot be postponed forever. And the market suggests waiting may only increase the cost. While those extension discussions continue to generate headlines, another topic has emerged involving a completely different area of the roster. This one centers around defensive tackle Chris Jenkins Jr. A recent trade discussion identified Jenkins as a possible candidate for Cincinnati to consider moving as the off-season progresses. At first glance, that suggestion may surprise some fans. After all, Jenkins remains a relatively young player and was selected with a significant draft investment. However, the argument revolves around opportunity and roster depth. According to the discussion, Cincinnati's defensive tackle room has become increasingly crowded. Veteran additions and established players have created a situation where younger players could face challenges finding consistent snaps. That reality has placed several names under the microscope. Jenkins has shown flashes during his time with the Bengals. Over 2 seasons, he has accumulated 67 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 4.5 sacks across 29 games. Those numbers indicate there has been productive work. They also suggest there may still be untapped potential. Yet the question remains whether there will be enough playing time available for him to fully develop within the current structure of the defensive line. That is where the trade conversation begins. Supporters of a move might argue that another team could offer more opportunities. They might also point to Cincinnati's overall roster construction and salary cap considerations. Even though a trade would not create an enormous financial difference, every dollar matters when teams are trying to balance current competitiveness with future commitments. On the other hand, there is a compelling argument for keeping Jenkins. The biggest reason is simple. Many believe there is still more to see. Development is not always linear. Young defensive linemen often require time. Depth along the defensive front remains valuable throughout a long NFL season. Injuries happen. Rotations expand. Unexpected opportunities emerge. Because of that, moving on from a player before fully evaluating his ceiling can be risky. And that is exactly why opinions on Jenkins vary. Some view him as a potential trade asset. Others view him as an important depth piece who deserves additional opportunities. Either way, his name has now entered the off-season discussion, making him another player worth monitoring as training camp approaches. As if extension talk and trade speculation were not enough, Bengals fans also received some noteworthy schedule-related information. And for those who enjoy following every stage of preseason preparation, this is particularly interesting. The Bengals are expected to host the Chicago Bears for a joint practice before their preseason matchup in Cincinnati. Joint practices have become increasingly popular across the NFL, and for good reason. They offer players an opportunity to compete against unfamiliar opponents before games begin. They provide coaches with valuable evaluation opportunities. They create highly competitive environments that often reveal strengths and weaknesses more effectively than standard practice sessions. For fans, they are also incredibly entertaining. These events frequently generate some of the most talked-about moments of the preseason. Whether it is a standout performance, a breakout player, or simply the chance to watch two teams compete in a different setting, joint practices tend to attract significant attention. The Bengals' preseason schedule will begin with 2 home games before the team eventually travels for a matchup against Philadelphia. While preseason results themselves rarely define a season, the preparation period remains important. It is where roster battles are decided. It is where young players attempt to earn roles. It is where coaches gather information that influences final decisions. And this year, those evaluations could become even more important because of the number of roster questions Cincinnati is trying to answer. Who earns long-term extensions? Who becomes part of the future core? Who may find themselves involved in trade discussions? Who steps forward and forces the organization to rethink its plans? Those questions remain unanswered. What we do know is that DJ Turner currently sits at the center of one of the most important conversations happening around the Bengals. His representatives are talking with the team. His value appears to be rising. His future is becoming a major topic among fans and observers alike. And the longer the process continues, the more fascinating the situation becomes. If Cincinnati views him as a foundational piece moving forward, there may come a moment when acting quickly makes sense. If negotiations take longer, another strong season could dramatically change the financial landscape. Either way, this story is far from over. The coming months could determine whether DJ Turner remains one of the Bengals' long-term building blocks, or whether contract discussions become one of the biggest storylines surrounding the organization moving forward. Now I want to hear from you, Bengals fans. If you were making the decision today, would DJ Turner be your top extension priority? How much would you be willing to pay him? And what would you do with Chris Jenkins Jr.? Keep him, or consider a trade? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let the conversation begin. Who Dey?